Hi, I'm Jameel Smith, a contributing opinion writer at the Los Angeles Times and occasional left on Left, Right, and Center. Starting this week, I'm hosting a special program from KCRW called 1 Year Later. For 6 weeks, 3 hosts from different American perspectives will strive for honest conversations about the issues and ideas that have polarized our nation. Join me, Jennifer Rubin, and Ruben Navarrete for this unique exploration of yours, mine, and our vision for America. Left, Right, and Center presents 1 Year Later. Listen now for a sample episode of the series. You can find the complete series at kcrw.com/1yearlater or wherever you get your podcasts.
From KCRW in Santa Monica and PRI, Left, Right, and Center presents 1 Year Later.
1 year later.
Can you believe it's 1 year later?
1 year later.
1 year later.
This land is your land. This land is my land.
Hi, I'm Jameel Smith, one of your hosts for the special series 1 Year Later, presented by Left, Right, and Center. It's the Trump era, and we're taking a new approach to political debate. Today, building a wall along the U.S.-Mexican border and expelling undocumented immigrants by the thousands were 2 of President Trump's biggest campaign promises. He has fed anti-immigrant fervor with his on-again, off-again travel ban, which is now on again. But do Democrats share any blame? What can the left do better in the Trump era to protect immigrants? That's coming up on 1 Year Later, after headlines from NPR.
Check out KCRW's All News channel, News 24. Programming from KCRW, NPR, BBC, and more. 24 hours a day. Go to kcrw.com/news24 or listen on KCRW's app.
We're back with 1 Year Later, presented by Left, Right, and Center. I'm your host, Jameel Smith, contributing opinion writer at the Los Angeles Times. When Donald Trump descended that escalator to declare that he was running for president, he set the tone for the rest of the presidential race.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. But I speak to border guards, and they tell us what we're getting. And it only makes common sense. It only makes common sense. They're sending us not the right people. It's coming from more than Mexico. It's coming from all over South and Latin America, and it's coming probably from the Middle East. But we don't know, because we have no protection, and we have no competence. We don't know what's happening. And it's got to stop, and it's got to stop fast.
Little did we know that statement would form the basis of presidential policy one day. Off of that, let me introduce our panelists. Ruben Navarrete is back with us. He's a syndicated columnist, host of the podcast Navarrete Nation, and author of A Darker Shade of Crimson, Odyssey of a Harvard Chicano. He will also take over as the host of 1 Year Later on December 11th. Thanks for coming back and pulling some overtime, Ruben.
Hey, Jameel, great to be with you again.
And Daniel Hernandez is here in studio with me. He's a journalist, writer, and former Mexico bureau chief for Vice News. Thank you for coming in.
Hey, Jameel. Thank you.
And also joining us is Christina Mora, sociology professor at the University of California, Berkeley. Her research focuses on culture, race, ethnicity, and immigration. Thank you very much for joining us, Christina.
Thank you for having me on the show.
So Ruben Navarrete, syndicated columnist, let me start with you. Trump's inflammatory rhetoric tends to get the most attention when talking about the current anti-immigrant mood. But you see a blame the immigrant thing also happening on the left side of the political spectrum. Can you explain that a little bit?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jameel. It's been happening for some time. Let's recall the last time Congress did anything significant, I would argue, on immigration reform. It was 1986. In 1986, when Congress passed IRCA, Immigration Reform and Control Act, that was a bill written chiefly by Al Simpson, a senator from Wyoming who was a Republican, and signed into law by a Republican, Ronald Reagan, the president. It was opposed by many Democrats, opposed by the AFL-CIO, opposed by labor, because it's always been the case that organized labor and unions feel that too much immigration, illegal or legal, hurts American workers by driving down wages and creating more competition for jobs. I would cynically say that one of the chief effects is it makes U.S. workers work harder, get up earlier, work later, and they find it difficult to compete with immigrant workers and always have been. That's always been the case. And so in that regard, that kind of sentiment has always had a home in the Democratic Party.
Daniel Hernandez, you also feel that the left, needs to do some work here. Basically, what have they failed to do?
Well, I would say that the Democrats have failed for decades. Just as Ruben said, they've never been able to fully, to their core, I think, fundamentally define their views on immigration. They've constantly used the issue as a political football to sacrifice, in the first 100 days of a Democratic presidency, as they did with the Obama administration. The Dreamers, the young kids, literally had to force the Obama administration to do a presidential initiative to just make DACA policy. So I think all along the way, Democrats have failed. And it's true that there always has been division within the labor movement over what role immigration should play in their policy and in their interests.
Daniel, I want to have you listen to Congressman Luis Gutierrez of Illinois. He's the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Here he is speaking in July at a church in Chicago.
In this country, I am clear. The Dreamers are not criminals. Those who have TPS are not criminals. The millions of undocumented workers that work every day, sweat and toil at some of the most miserable jobs in the United States of America are not criminals. We are going to determine, and history is going to determine who those criminals are. And for me, the major criminal that exists in the United States of America is called Donald Trump. He lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue at the White House.
So, Daniel, it's easy to see why that would fire people up. But when you say that the left tends to just wag their finger at conservatives on immigration, is that the kind of statement you're talking about?
Right. I mean, Representative Gutierrez is in the trenches, but this is a kind of an obvious statement that he says in both regards. Of course, Dreamers aren't criminals. Dreamers are the best of the best. They're the cream of the crop. But they really shouldn't be placed on sort of a pedestal and used in this political manner. And it's very easy, I think, to throw these kind of political fireballs at President Trump, a very easy target. But that continues, I think, to mask the fact that the Democrats as a whole have been really unable to solve this issue. And it's really a political, it's almost, the public is very much in favor, of immigration reform, and the country is ready for this. So why haven't both parties been able to get it done?
We're discussing immigration during the Trump era here on 1 Year Later. Christina Mora, sociology professor at UC Berkeley. Do you agree with that? Do you feel like there's perhaps a respectability politics at play here in how Democrats talk about DACA recipients specifically, but also immigrants in total?
Oh, sure, of course. And I think DACA recipients themselves, the Dreamer movements often themselves say this project, this sort of respectability for us and our sense of belonging is not just about us. It's about our parents. It's about our brothers and sisters. It's about the broader than us 11 million people, and many within the Dreamer movement are rejecting this sort of downright stereotypification and categorization of them as so distinct and so amazingly different from the rest of the 11 million people. And it's just unfortunate the way that message about them being part of this larger community hasn't come out, and in large part because it is political football here.
And Christina, I want to follow up on that. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like sharing facts about why so many of the 11 million undocumented immigrants from Mexico, from Central America, do you feel like sharing those facts would make a difference in this debate?
It's hard because at this political moment, I just don't know where facts are going. I mean, we can, in 2007, the Congressional Budget Office, just like it had done in 2003, had this major report on sort of the economic cost of immigration, and especially looking at unauthorized migration. And time and again, all of our best economic analysis on the issue show that immigrants provide a net economic gain to the nation overall. There are costs that are shifted around different places, but overall, there's definitely a benefit to the small towns, to the large cities, statewide and nationwide. And yet, this rhetoric is completely lost, often within sort of a larger narrative of strangers among us, a tide of strangers coming in and invading, things of the sort. So I think,